story. I have a Jack story. I think Tony D heard this story in Lubbock, Texas. Man, we had a convention. I had the privilege of introducing Jack there. What a lot of people don't know is that Jack was a lover of horseback riding, and Jack was an equestrian before he could even spell equestrian. But he loved to get high and ride horses. So one day he had a whole routine that he did. Man, he had the leather chaps, and the spurs and the boots, and had them patent leather boots, you know what I mean? And the vest, even put like a little star on his vest, you know what I mean? To emulate a police officer. and then he got high. I mean, he got high, man. He was higher than giraffe nuts. And so he went down and he rented a horse, and he got on the horse and he was fucked up, and he's riding, and it's kind of a slow little lope that he's doing, But Jack, being so high, he starts to fall off. He's falling back. His life's passing in front of his eyes. He's falling back, and he knows this could be the end. And if He fell a long way. So what happened was Jack was right. If Jack was going to fall. He was going to hurt himself. And had it not been for the manager of Walmart to come out and unplug that horse, Jack might not be here right now. You know what I mean? So there's always been a special thing in Jack's heart for Walmart. You know what I mean? When he goes by, he always has a special thing that they saved his life. Seriously, Jack has been my sponsor for, 20, 25 years, a long time. And Jack's one of them guys that the best question Jack has ever asked me was, I was in his room sniveling about something, talking about I was afraid of this, afraid of that, afraid of this. And Jack said, "What would you do if you weren't afraid? What would you do if you weren't afraid?" Man, that's cleared up a lot of stuff. I said, "Well, I just do this." And he goes, "Well, then just do that." That's about as simple as Jack keeps it. So I want to introduce my friend and sponsor, Jack W.
I'm an addict named Jack. I'm glad to be here. I feel honored and privileged that the committee thought enough of me to have me come out. Hopefully, after I'm through, you will agree with them. I'm a little overwhelmed to be in a room with some people that I've known for over 40 years. And our stories have not changed a bit except the incidents in between. We came in here defeated, was shown a recipe on how to get out from under that. We followed the recipe, and we get to be here. That's pretty amazing. My first meeting, though, was in 1966. I know I don't look that old, but however, that's when it was. And there's nobody alive today that was at that meeting. The last person that was Eddie Minner when he passed. He was at that meeting. My brother tricked me into going to that meeting. And how he did that is I was sick. And I needed to score, and he told me if I went to that meeting, I can find somebody in the meeting, and we can go get down afterwards. And nobody was wanting to go that night. But I went to the meeting because I go for the okie doke anytime. But there was this little guy there named Jimmy Kennan, and you'll hear a lot of things about Jimmy, and a lot of things you're going to hear about him come from people that never even seen him, let alone have personal knowledge of what his character was like or what he was like or whatever. So you have to be cautious. If somebody's trying to repeat a story to you about him, ask them, well, how do you know? Were you there? A little simple thing like that might clear it up a little bit. And Jimmy said a couple things that were very important, and I'd like to tell you. There's some new people in this room tonight that did not raise your hand and identify as being new. But we know who you are. Because the people who are in this meeting, they go to meetings all the time, so they know when somebody's new. And you can come here as often as you want and don't raise your hand. It doesn't matter. But you'll start feeling better about yourself if you do. And little Jimmy, I thought he was talking to me. There was 8 people in that meeting that night. It was down on Yucca and Gower in the Hollywood section of Los Angeles. And he says in Narcotics Anonymous is that we love you, we want you, and more important than that, we need you. Now, I'd never heard those words come out of anybody's mouth before. I certainly hadn't uttered them to anybody. But I know today the meaning and the value of that. Because if you guys don't come here, we don't have anybody to give our whatever we found to you. And it's necessary that we pass on what we've gained so that you can gain as well. And another thing he said that in Narcotics Anonymous, you're going to find it's going to mess up your using. Forget about it. If this is your first meeting, it's over. You might as well just quit. Because the Narcotics Anonymous thing is in your head now, and that Narcotics Anonymous lamp will go on, and then you're going to try to figure out, well, how come you're feeling so bad? Well, you already heard a message of recovery, and he said that in Narcotics Anonymous, you never, ever, ever have to use again, even if you want to. That was a pretty powerful statement. And it's still true. Even if you want to, you don't have to. That had never been part of my experience, but it's certainly true. Because we together can stop anything from happening that singularly we couldn't. And he went on to explain how that worked. About one addict helping another is without parallel, and that there comes a time in life when life shows up. And just because we get clean, that don't exempt us from getting the things that other people get. Some of us go years and years and years, don't have any calamities happening in life. I mean, we get into the business of living and working with others and going to meetings and doing things that we never dreamed we could. And then the other shoe drops. Medical issues arise. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge. I'm dealing with several now. And it doesn't make me feel all that comfortable. But I'm thankful to God that I'm here and I can see you guys, and that I can see the floor, I can taste the food, and be thankful that God has brought me this far, and I haven't been brought this far to be dumped on my ass. It just wasn't part of my experience. So I left that meeting that night, discouraged and a little, well, I was pissed off. Because I was sick. I was getting sicker, and I needed to get down, and I didn't have enough money. And the connection wasn't going to give me any up front. And so I went and did what I knew how to do. I went and stole something. I was back in county jail in a few days and on my way back to the joint. And I went to meetings. They didn't have any Narcotics Anonymous meetings in any of the joints yet, although the very first Narcotics Anonymous meeting was at Walla Walla Penitentiary in '66. And but they didn't have any, not in the state of California anyway. So I went to AA meetings. That's what they had available for 12 steps. And I came out the last time was in 1969. I did 3 years. And Pepe picked me up. And he kind of helped me out a lot, you know. He put into practice what a lot of people just say out loud and don't do. And so I started going to meetings, and then Jimmy said, well, your first job is wash dishes and ashtrays. And at that time, you know, a room this size would be 3/4 full of smoke, because everybody smoked. They smoked pipes, they smoked cigars, they, you know. And we had these little porcelain coffee cups, and so that was my job. That was my job to the community. That was my job. It was supposed to teach me how to integrate back into society. And I liked that job. And Jimmy came back to about 4 months later and said, you're not doing the dishes anymore. Somebody else needs to get clean fingernails. You know, and so he had this job for me to do, and I did what they asked me to do, because that's what they did. He said, if you want what we have and you're willing to go to the effort to get it, you got to do certain things. And these certain things I had to do were things that were uncommon to me. They were foreign to me. They were things that I hadn't done before. Not necessarily because I didn't want to, it's because I was a lazy guy. And I wanted other people still to do for me what I could do for myself. But there's a couple guys around that didn't play that game. They just didn't. And then I had a variety of other little commitments and learning how to integrate myself into the world. And a lot of that was through inventory. You know, and my first inventory, let me tell you about that. You know, I went down to the stationery store and bought 2 yellow legal tablets, and I started writing. And the more I wrote, the more I wrote. You know, it was sickening as I look back on it. And I was going to San Diego with one of our departed members, and I said I was really talking up this inventory that I'd done and how long I'd done it. And he said, it doesn't impress me a bit. You know, and he looked over at it closer, and then he grabbed it out of my hand, started tearing it up, and threw it out on the Santa Ana freeway. And I said, man, what was that all about? He says, when you write an inventory next time, I got a couple of suggestions for you. One of the suggestions is you write it in ballpoint pen. And don't get all the way down to the bottom of the page and decide that you made a little mistake down there and you got to redo it all because it's not perfect. I want to see what you scratched out. I can tell immediately by looking at it if it's honest. You don't have to utter a word, Jack. So I can look at it. I can look at the nature of the writing. I can know if you struggled or whether you just wrote down something to write something down. The other thing is, I want you to put a prayer on the top of each page. Each page. And pick a prayer. Don't have to be my prayer, or Chuck's prayer, or Jack's prayer. Your prayer. And so I found that to be very beneficial to me. And the prayer I chose was one, is, Dear God, help me tell the truth. I'm tired of lying and dying. And somehow that broke down some of that garbage spinning around in my head and set the tone for whatever writing I was doing. And I don't know whether that's useful to you or not, but it was to me. And like a lot of people, unlike a lot of people, I wasn't geared to become the head of Narcotics Anonymous. I didn't want to be the office manager. I just wanted to be one of the ones, part of the flock. But things don't get done with that. There's got to be some people that step up and do courageous things, man, by being part of the boards and stuff like that. So when you got to the regional level, I backed down. And all kinds of things in the area level, thankfully I was able to do that and know that I've never felt better than when I've come home from an H&I commitment, for example. And I went to that commitment knowing that if I didn't show up, they wouldn't have had a meeting that night. And they at least got to see a little bit of the message. Because I remember being in there, and when we had a black night, we didn't have the speaker show up. I felt bad. I felt harmed. I took it personally. I shouldn't have, but I did. And so every time I went on an H&I panel, my motivation was I said I'd go and I'm going to show up. Keep my commitments. And it was good. With that H&I, let me say this, is a lot of times my experience has been the best H&I message comes out of the mouth of a person that's never been in a hospital or institution. And the people inside who are wanting the message of recovery can see it and they can feel it. And get somebody that's all tatted down and has that yard talk down. It's not always a good, clear message of recovery, although the person saying it may in fact be a good recovering addict. Sometimes it don't come across that way. And that's the last I'm going to be on that one. I'm kind of at a loss some things to share, except John tells that story about that Walmart horse so good, that must have been his experience. I mean, the clarity that he had was, I mean, that was just too uncanny that he'd have that kind of clarity. And, but, you know, like he says he's from Fresno, but he's from Los Deltas. Different place. Close, but not no cigar. And that's good. And I'm glad that was the H&I thing. I first met John as an H&I commitment. And Mel H., was at that meeting. And Pepe was at that meeting. And CRC. We run CRC to take a meeting to the guys. And he was in that meeting in 1973. And I'd long since forgot. But I remember many times driving out to CRC and for a meeting when I'd rather be doing something different. But I went and did it anyway because it was important for me to keep that commitment. I don't know whether Mel was with me that one night. They had a little riot break out. The goon squad came in the back of the dorm, got us out, and we can hear gunfire going off as we were going out of the parking lot. You know, and but it didn't go down in the dorm that we were in. And I see there's no coincidence in that. Because it could have easily went off in that dorm right there. But it didn't. How you sum up 45 years in a couple minutes of the good, the bad, and the indifferent. Because it all happens. Life shows up. We report for duty. Hopefully, we do it with some space that we have in our heart to better ourselves and those around us. And sometimes it's not that. Sometimes it's so selfish it don't consider anybody else. I want to say this, and I'm going to have to sit down. If you're new, or even if you're old, there's a few old people in here tonight. That's good. You know, I mean, we can see the floor, we can see the ceiling. I mean, we're for the most part present, and Jimmy said that to me too. Get Narcotics Anonymous. That we love you, we want you, more important that we need you, so we never ever have to use again, even if you want to. And he said, trust me, life will show up, and there's going to be some time that you want to use. And you get on the phone to another addict, and we make it possible that you don't use. It doesn't seem to make sense, particularly. But so we steps in and he does it. And I'm glad there's a good turnout here. Hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. And that's it. God bless you.